Here are my thoughts on Season 4, Episode 1 of Better Call Saul, Smoke. I made videos like this on my old YouTube channel, all of 3 for the first 3 episodes of Season 2. I don't know why I stopped making them. It's not like it's difficult to do so. So here we go. I've seen the episode only the one time when it aired. It's like almost 2 days have passed since then. So my thoughts have had time to percolate, but I haven't written anything down, so this is still impromptu. So, hopefully I won't be stumbling over my words or, having any extended bits of silence. Okay, so the episode starts, and of course we get another Gene scene. Each of these, the Gene scenes have become increasingly tense and dramatic as the 4 seasons have progressed. First two even are kind of pensive. The second one has a little element of danger to it in that, Gene could, if he so chose, he could come face to face with the police if he pulls the emergency escape lever in that back room. Third time he has to interact with the police, but they're not actually they don't suspect him in any manner. In this case, he's not talking with the police too much, only in the hospital a slight amount, or he sees them in the hospital. But he seems to be, there's the possibility that he's under direct suspicion himself when his social security number and driver's license get knocked back in that computer system. I was watching the episode with my family, and my brother said that moment was to him the most tense of that entire cold open, because it suggested that maybe Ed the Vanisher, the vacuum repair guy, that his system giving someone a new identity, a complete new identity, was not foolproof, and that there was a problem with the social security number or the driver's license. But at the same still, the whole bit at the end in the taxi, that was Breaking Bad level tension, in my opinion. And one thing I've noticed, I started to notice this last season, but they have been starting to use, the directors of these episodes have been starting to use more handheld camera again. Like in Breaking Bad, Breaking Bad was, it was a slow burn even, particularly for the first couple seasons, but obviously it was generally more dramatic and tense than Better Call Saul has been. And so to mirror that, in Breaking Bad, the camera was generally handheld, so that, a slightly shaky frame, of course, adds some kind of chaotic undertone to the scene. Whereas in Better Call Saul, particularly the first couple seasons, they really relied on tripod shots for the most part. But in Season 3, I started to notice, as we approached the Breaking Bad timeline, as Jimmy has begun his transformation, as we've gotten to be, as the showrunners say, as the overlap between Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad has grown larger and larger, they started to use more handheld camera, and in the ending shot of this Gene scene in Season 4, like the camera, like it was just somebody walking with the camera in that end shot as Gene gets out of the taxi and walks toward the house, and you see the taxi in the background still there. The guy won't leave. He suspects him. He's from Albuquerque, of course, so he might have known who Saul Goodman was. That's brilliant drama, and just what struck me was the fact that that shaky camera, it's just like Breaking Bad. It's I don't know, very very well executed, and these directors, they really they obviously, it goes without saying, they're meticulous, and they have expertise when it comes to every single little choice here is made with purpose. So that is the kind of thing that they don't want to go unnoticed, as from what I can tell. Great ending shot, great ending bit to that cold open. Just the shot as it ends with Gene, I should say. I keep saying, I try to stick to his name, like, depending on what era of what part of the timeline it's in. Gene is just, breathing heavily. You still see the taxi in the background. I knew I mean, I knew before it happened that the scene was going to cut right there, and it did, and I'm so happy that it did, because that was brilliant. Best Jean scene so far. It was kind of getting to the point where I was worried they were kind of stagnating a little bit, and I was worried that maybe it would just be kind of, like, each Jean scene wouldn't really... Like, they would mostly be just tone setters for the rest of the season, and they wouldn't really come together to form their own narrative. But clearly that's not going to happen, because this one, it's each of the first three were episodic in and of themselves, and that they didn't connect to each other. This one is a direct continuation of the season 3 one, and with this kind of cliffhanger that they have here, there's no way they're not going to continue this now. I suspect that this will be the beginning of either the beginning or the beginning of the end for what's going to happen with Jean. I hope they have at least an episode or two of just Jean at the end of the series once we finally caught up to and through Breaking Bad. But if they even, I hope, my heart wants an entire season of that, though I worry that that's not necessarily realistic. There might not be enough material to work with. Anyway, gone on long enough about this. I've gone on for this for like 6 minutes. This opening scene. Past that, episode starts. It has a really interesting... the first scene in the present, the Jimmy timeline, has a really interesting start. I don't think they've ever done anything like that before. You see that non-diegetic insert, visual insert of the floating bits of paper or dust or like those embers. It's like a truly artful. I don't think they've ever really done anything like that where, I mean, obviously the show is artful in its cinematography, but it's not, they don't usually do something so symbolic that it's not even really there in the world of the show. But they did there, poignant, striking after the previous season ends with the house fire. You know what that means, why they did that. It's striking and kind of sad, knowing that what Jimmy's about to find out and everything. And they make no bones about that. They don't drag that out at all. Jimmy immediately, after looking through some wanted ads in the paper and feeding his fish, he immediately finds out that Chuck, the house burned down and Chuck's dead. And furthermore, another thing that I'm pretty glad they did is that they also made no bones about the fact that Chuck did it on purpose, that he committed suicide. Because there was not necessarily... This was some discussion among the fans before this episode aired, before Season 4 we knew anything about it. Because there was not necessarily any way of knowing that Chuck did it on purpose. All that they would know is that it was a lantern that started a house fire. It could have just happened by accident, of course. But great attention to detail. Jimmy notices that all the electronic devices in the house had been thrown out on the front lawn, so Chuck clearly had relapsed, and something, and they reinforce it knowing that Hamlin at the end of the episode says the same thing. There was no way that Chuck, was just careless with the lantern and it happened by accident. It was on purpose. I'm glad they went that route with it, just to really just twist the knife in all these characters to accentuate and exacerbate their guilt. Good choice to do that. So, interesting, here's one thing that I think maybe the episode could have shown more of, but I do have faith that this will be addressed soon and throughout the rest of the season. But they didn't really acknowledge too much about how Kim herself was feeling in response to Chuck's death, and how she may have felt in some ways responsible. That was clear based on the previous season and how she kind of snapped at Paige in, I think it was 307. That, she says, we tore down a sick man. She feels in part responsible just for Chuck's breakdown at the bar hearing, at Jimmy's hearing. So now that Chuck is dead, you would think that she would she's morally upstanding. She must feel in some ways responsible. and yet she didn't. She mostly was only there and only caring and sympathetic insofar as she was trying to comfort Jimmy. I don't know if what I said there just made any sense. She mostly just comforted Jimmy in this episode. She didn't seem to really. I mean, she was mostly. We didn't really get too much of a good look at her psychology. It didn't really come across too much. I mean, Jimmy's didn't either, in that he stayed so silent for most of the episode. We don't know exactly how he was feeling in response to Chuck's death, at least not until the end, when he says that one line to Howard. But as for Kim, I think that I remember reading in some interview from I don't know if it was Gould or Gilligan or someone else, but Kim, I believe they said that Kim would feel in part responsible for Chuck's death, and so I have to assume that will be addressed in upcoming episodes. Though I wish we had gotten a little more immediate response from her. She didn't really have too much connection to Chuck. He was just her boss, and I don't know how often she really saw him before the series started or anything. But even so, you'd think that she would. I wish they'd shown a little bit more of her immediate response, more so than just being there for Jimmy to lean on in the aftermath of it. So. A nitpick, a minor complaint. As for well, I'll talk about the ending line. The ending of the episode with that line that Jimmy says to Howard, that's definitely, from what I can tell, most people, that's what people are talking about the most. That's what struck me the most about the whole episode. That's kind of the highlight. I'll talk about it later. As for the Mike storyline, it's really on a whole, as a on a macro level here, in terms of the whole show so far. If there's any one thing I really can complain about, it's the fact that we've seen so much of Mike kind of just sitting and waiting and watching for things, and it kind of got a little bit stale. I mean, it's still so well shot, and it makes sense in terms of the narrative, and it's written well. So again, that's also a minor complaint. But even so, it's still like season 1. He does some waiting and watching, near in the Kettleman's house where he goes in there. Season 2, there's a lot of it when he's looking at the ice cream truck, seeing where its connection to Hector and everything. Like, there's a lot of it there too. And season 3, even in the first episode, and even after that, as he's trying to find Gus and track down Gus. The first 2 episodes, in fact, there's still a lot of it. So, I'm glad, my point being, I'm glad that here we got to see something a bit different with him. Again, that's not to say we haven't seen anything different with him thus far, but I'm glad that what he's doing now, he's in a totally new setting, doing something vastly different from what he's done thus far, being in the magical warehouse area. That's great, and obviously funny as hell to see him in a neon vest driving around in a little cart. I feel as if maybe he was. I don't know. I like to think that was Jonathan Banks requesting to ride that thing instead of it was in the script, though I doubt it. Anyway, a really great writing in this scene, actually, the point of this scene is brilliant, because there are like 3 different reasons. It's funny in and of itself, so that's good, but there are like 3 different reasons, like legitimate reasons, 2 at least, arguably 3, as to why he's doing this, as to why he's actually going to this magical place, to the warehouse, and doing the job that he's supposed to do, on paper. He's doing it because he's bored, as you can tell by, like, the scene that sets it up, where he's just kind of sitting around in his house. He feels like he should be doing something. He's just getting money, but he feels like he should be doing something. So he's doing it because he needs some stimulation. But at the same time, he's doing it for 2 other more important reasons. first of all, to establish an alibi should he ever need one, as he's signed up as a security consultant. That is his title. That's his position there, supposedly. And so, should he ever be found out that he's using this company for money laundering, he needs an alibi to, so that his income can be said to be coming from that job, from actually coming from this company. And so that's why he's actually doing the job. So there's that. And furthermore, as a security consultant, he's going there and with that, by giving that list of like 15 different things that they need to be doing better, like that their security cameras have blind spots, and they should be shredding documents when they're just throwing them away, like, and 12 other things, all of which are, great moment there when he lists all that stuff. That's great acting. I love that. But he's doing that, additionally, he's doing that so that he will be less likely to be found out. So that, the company will be less likely to be found out in that they're doing some illegal, shady business practices. So, point being, Mike, extremely intelligent character. There are so many of them in this universe. This seemingly comedic scene has 2 to 3 very important purposes. And that's again, great writing there. So, I guess that kind of leads into, at the same time, the Mike is kind of the intermediary, the bridge between the Jimmy storyline, the legal storyline, and the cartel storyline. So the straight up cartel storyline in this episode, focusing on Nacho, but also Gus. It's seems to be primarily a setup for what's to come, but it's a really, it makes me extremely excited for what's to come when they're speaking of on a shallow level. It makes me quite excited when they say things like, a war is coming and the DEA might get involved. That makes me, hopeful that it could involve, that Hank and Gomez might show up as just a Breaking Bad fanboy, from speaking from that perspective. A lot of the promotion for this season has focused on this upcoming cartel war and shootout. We all know it's coming. There's promotional stills of Nacho and the Salamanca twins right in the middle of, right in crossfire. I can't wait for that. The next episode is directed by Michelle Maclaren, who usually does action scenes like that, high octane, high tension action scenes, like she did the Salamanca twins Hank shootout. She actually also in Better Call Saul season 1 did the second episode, it taking place in the desert with Tuco and Jimmy and those two skateboarding guys, which is a relatively high intensity scene and episode in the early bit of this series. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here. So, point being, the second episode might, in fact, involve that shootout, or at least the beginning of it, or the beginning of this supposed cartel war. That'd be, not much to say past the fact that I am quite excited for it. One thing, I wonder... Truly, I have no idea what to think or predict when it comes to what's going to happen between Nacho and Gus. Obviously, it's clear now Gus suspects that Nacho is the one responsible for Hector's collapse, that he swapped the pills and everything. And he has Victor spying on him at at some point in this episode, you see Victor spying on him from a car. Nacho, that is. I don't know if Gus is going to antagonize Nacho for this or not. Somehow, I don't know what Gus's move is going to be exactly. He obviously doesn't like he hates Hector, and he doesn't like the Salamancas in general. I don't know. The point here, the foreshadowing seems to suggest that this will, as Hector has collapsed, the Salamanca family territory, somebody will encroach on that. I don't know if Gus is going to actually actively help to keep antagonistic forces away, or if he's going to kind of like stand by and let it happen when he's not supposed to, when, Juan Bolsa and Don Eladio don't really want him to, but he's kind of going to inadvertently, indirectly encourage encroachment on Salamanca territory. I don't know. And I don't know how Nacho is going to play into that. Nacho's trying to just basically get the fuck out of the drug trade at this point and save his father. From a shallow standpoint, in that it's just going to be action heavy and plot heavy in terms of like strategy type shit. That's the kind of thing that I have indeed missed from Breaking Bad. Not just violence. Violence is not entertaining in and of itself, but when it's built up and when there is when it's part of something bigger like a cartel war would be, then it's great, and I want to see it. So I'm glad that it seems to be making a comeback, or it will in the near future. Yeah, as for this episode, the ending with Jimmy's last line to Howard. First of all, I thought they would show more of Chuck's funeral. I thought that would kind of be, because I saw in the official season trailer that they were going for, like, they showed that a lot. I thought that would be kind of the emotional climax of the first episode here. I thought that would be an extended scene, and it wasn't at all. It was more so the aftermath there, where you see, obviously, I mean, it's the conversation among Jimmy, Kim, and Howard. That is the emotional climax of the episode. Yeah, as the show has progressed, it's so cool to me how first season we see Howard for the most part as the villain. He's portrayed as a complete asshole. That I'm not saying anything here that other people haven't already said. But at this point, when it comes to by season 4, it's almost he's arguably the most noble character left in the series. I shouldn't say left. I mean, only Chuck has died, and Chuck was certainly not noble, really. But how, we've gotten glimpses of Howard's backstory and psychology and everything. At this point, he was just completely vulnerable and just almost ashamed of what he had done, and it was, I don't know, it was heart-wrenching to see. And of course, Jimmy just twists the knife in him further with that "it's your cross to bear" line. And his reaction to that, I did not see that coming in the slightest. That Jimmy, I thought, going into this season, my prediction was that Jimmy would truly try to be a better person in wake of Chuck's death. In that he would feel that he had caused it, at least in part, and that he would truly be ashamed. Maybe that was a stupid thing to think, because obviously Chuck had truly hurt him, and so he shouldn't necessarily feel so guilty about it, or he wouldn't necessarily feel so guilty about it. He doesn't seem to be feeling any overt guilt at all. I mean, I thought that he would try to take on. I thought that he would try to be a good person in response to Chuck's death, and it would lead to him actually pushing people away, namely Kim, further away, because he was trying too hard. I know that's that's vague. That's a vague way of putting it. Maybe I don't even really know what I thought would happen. But clearly that's not what is gonna happen at all. At the surface, he's going to feel no guilt, and it's surely going to come across at some point. He is not done mourning Chuck's death, no way. But I guess he's not going to let it show to anyone, really. And that's kind of it's kind of scary, to be honest. That's not so. That's sad. But yeah, those would be my thoughts. Great episode. It's generally the last two seasons 2 and 3, the first episodes of each of those seasons, they were slower. They were build up. They built up what was going to happen in subsequent episodes. They were. This one is similar, but in a sense, it's almost better than those two were. The first episodes of seasons 2 and 3 were almost kind of disappointing to me at the time. Not to say they were bad by any means, they were great as always, but, after you wait for an entire 10 months or so for a season, in this case more than 10 months, but after you wait so long for a season and you are so excited for it to come back, and then it starts on kind of a slow note, it just kind of picks up where it left off, and it keeps plotting forward, and there's no real big, nothing huge, no huge revelation, no huge plot point or turning point, or anything like that. It's kind of a disappointment. It can't possibly be anything but a disappointment when you've built up, when you've anticipated for so long. In this case, though, I almost kind of knew it would be this way, and given that it's going to be a somber episode in some ways, given that Chuck has just died and the characters are going to find that out. So this kind of episode with this kind of tone, it fits here better than it has the previous two seasons. Again, not that those two episodes, 201 and 301, were bad by any means. But here it fits better than it ever has. And I am truly excited to see where it goes next. I have full faith that this season will be at least as good as the last, which was... Season 3 was incredible, in my opinion. Better than any season in this whole universe other than Breaking Bad seasons 4 and 5. So, this is promising. Promising as always. And hopefully I will make another one of these for the next episode, and then the 8 episodes after that.